I'm Ted Meyer in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Lisa Sniderman, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much for talking with me today. So first, why don't we start with a little bit about your medical history?
So the best way to say it is I kind of give you a picture this. So picture this. You are about to get married. You're working full-time as an environmental scientist, and it's also a couple weeks before your wedding. And you're planning a workshop, and all of a sudden you get a strange rash on your hands, and it affects your knuckles and your nail beds, and you think, I'm just going to go to the dermatologist and he's going to give me some cortisone cream, and it's probably something that like a contact dermatitis. And instead he takes one look, and based on these telltale signs, he says that you have a very unpronounceable disease, and he refers you to a rheumatologist. And that was me at 35, and this was in 2008. And so I've been dealing with a rare chronic illness. It's called dermatomyositis. It's a progressive autoimmune muscle weakness disease, and I've been dealing with that for more than 12 years. And what it basically does is it attacks my immune system, and it also weakens my muscles. And it also causes debilitating fatigue, stamina, and energy issues. And just incidentally, the incidence of DM in the United States is pretty rare. It's only around 9 cases per million people. And so I think that's also kind of interesting. So I've
Lucky
been
you.
Yeah, lucky me. And I've been dealing with the challenges of managing and trying to find the right combination of treatments and immune suppressive drugs and infusions and therapies that allow me to survive, like to deal with the day-to-day challenges and maintain my quality of life since April of 2008. And the worst of it for me, honestly, was a flare-up in 2010 when I was hospitalized for nearly a month because of total weakness due to a flare, as I said, that what really rendered me unable to move, and then caused me to have to go through rehab, relearning how to sit, stand, walk, and eventually, because I'm also in arts and musician, how to sing and play again.
So is this, because you think of dermatology, you think of it just on the surface, but is this a neurological that it goes all the way through?
So you're talking about the inflammation of both skin and muscle, and the dermato part is the skin involvement. So you can still, it's a pathological, and that meaning the pathology is different than a different kind of a muscle disease. And so, I, for example, don't have skin conditions because I'm managing them, but I had them for years. So you don't always have to continue to have the skin.
Now, you were doing music before, right? You were creative before all this.
So I was both an environmental scientist and also a singer-songwriter. But my creativity, as I was saying, I was just about to release my first full album. So I was just sort of launching into this creativity in terms of being a singer-songwriter. And what happened, I feel like as a result of the illness, I said I was in the hospital, right? So as I came out of the hospital, it was really a story of surviving to thriving, because I ended up really plunging into my creativity. So imagine that, it's kind of a combination of physical and mental transformation. The physical transformation happens when you can no longer move and you're going from complete independence to dependence. And for me, I required home care, I required bathing, I required physical and occupational therapy, I required family and friends to shuttle me to the hospital for, weekly infusions. I had to learn a slower baseline and a whole world of wheelchairs and walkers and ramps and canes and commodes, and so I felt like my body was waging war on me and really took a steep toll. And then there's also the mental side, which is that it's questioning your identity, your contributions, your worth and your value, and understanding that you're not in control anymore. All of these things are really take a toll. And the reason I'm mentioning them is because that is partly why I think I threw myself at creativity, is that it was a way to counter darkness. give me purpose, remind me who I was at my core as an artist. It's getting in touch with your inner artist. It's the part of you that lights up, and is passionate about something. And it doesn't always have to be something that's so concrete, like pick up a paintbrush and I'm painting, or I pick up my guitar in my case and I, write a song. It can be, being inspired by a music that you listen to, taking a walk in nature and letting the muse flow, right? There's all kinds of ways I feel like creativity, but it also is, to me, have you ever been in that place where it's flow and you're so caught up in the moment that you forget to do your daily needs, like eat? That to me is why I flock to creativity. It's my joy place. It doesn't mean that the disease disappears, but I can be in that place for a little while and know that, I'm somewhere else other than have to think about my illness. So that's my first skill, as I would say, and direction was, that is creativity and creating. Yes, I, had written songs, but I obsessively created, and I have been for about 12 years. And it's taken the form of songs, musicals. When I could no longer do things live, I had to find ways to keep my songwriter dream alive. And so I started writing and recording from home. And then I actually created scripts and I wrote a musical, and I ended up adapting that to stage plays. And then I created films. I wrote a book, and I ended up doing all of these different things that I never would have done, I don't think, had I, had the onset of dermatomyositis. It's amazing. So then for me, my second skill, while I was going through all of this, is mindset and what I call attitude. And I'm not going to be Pollyanna-ish about this. Everybody who we know, who is familiar with going through chronic illness, especially, I'm not saying that you don't have good, bad days, and that it's not hard and difficult. What I am saying is that for me, I fill my head and my heart with passion and with joy and with love and gratitude. And I always hold on to hope. And those are huge for me, and I never even understood how big those were. But it's not having a victim mentality. It's like having the disease, but not being the disease. And my latest thing, to be honest, was actually learning to say yes and, which is a theater technique. But what it means is, it can mean, gosh, today I really am tired and my body is, having a hard time doing whatever it's doing today. And I have to cancel this activity and whatever it is. And the sun is shining. And, my dog is licking my feet. So that both are happening and you don't have to deny one. So that was my second skill. And then for me, my third skill, amazingly, was being able to see the gift in the curse. That's what I call it. It's becoming a light in the darkness. So I'm saying my story is like surviving to thriving, but my story, or I should say, and my story is also becoming a light in the darkness. It's realizing that it's more. So what happened for me personally in 2016, I had this, I don't know, an awareness that, and a yearning that I wanted to be part of something bigger. So we're talking about me expressing and creating, but that wasn't enough. I wanted to give back. So I ended up writing my story and wanting to share my story. And that's what I call my third skill, which is shining my light. And I think that this is important because the more that we share our stories and the more that we're able to, even as I'm doing now, I think that it also is an opening. It enables other people to want to share their stories. It also can inspire others, of course, but it's an opening. And the more that I share mine, I find that people tell me, oh, this happened to you. Wow, this happened to me too. And it can help them share their own story. And so then I also realized that being a wasn't enough. In other words, I was hiding behind this artist persona and being, caught in my fantasy worlds and caught up in the music. And what I then realized is I had this opportunity to start integrating my art, integrating my illness journey into my art. So before this point, it was basically separate. It was musicals and songs and albums. And then there was me going through this other side that people didn't see, right? The darkness, having to go to 187 or more doctor's appointments, dealing with even when I was receiving awards and industry recognition, it was the stuff that people didn't see, which is I'd have to take naps, I'd have to, pace myself, I'd have to choose activities. So all of this is happening at the same time, but I wasn't putting that into my art. And my illness, the first time when I started recognizing it, I was able to then publish my memoir. So I was able to share my story. It's called A Light in the Darkness, Transcending Chronic Illness Through the Power of Art and Attitude. And what it is, in essence, is it's this inspirational story of the power of music, creativity, following your dreams, and finding your purpose. And it answers the central question, what do you do when you're struggling with an illness and disability that doesn't go away? So that was kind of my third skill. And my fourth, which came out of that, is being a light. So one is sharing the story, and to me the other one is being a light. In other words, asking other people to help share their stories. And I've done that in various ways too, which is the first one was, not the first, the latest, I actually put a summit together in this last year. I spent a year interviewing 60 different experts to help others thrive with chronic illness. I also interviewed in 2018 45 different artists who are creating to heal, and had them, share their art and their stories. So I think all of this sort of was like seeing the gift and the curse, using your illness to shine your own light and be a light to others. And then the next thing for me on my journey, which was amazing, and it's actually very recent, is understanding wellness and thriving. So for me, my whole journey actually has been really focused on the physical. And I say that without understanding. So if you have ever, dealing with chronic illness, you go to doctors, you get prescriptions for drugs. In my case, I have a mobility and muscle weakness disease. So I have physical therapy, occupational therapy at times, rehab, all of this, right? And I didn't get that wellness and what that means to me is beyond the physical realm. It's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. So that was huge, because it's not that I wasn't ever doing that. I feel like creating helps do that, right? But the skill of understanding what wellness and thriving means also opened my eyes to the fact that I wasn't nurturing these emotional, spiritual sides as much. And it also led me to my very last skill, which is grieving and empowering others to grieve. That's huge for me. So going through all of this, I'm talking to you about musicals and books and films and all of these great ways of creating. And in 12 years, I realized that I forgot to grieve. That's a big deal, because if you're not grieving, I feel like I've lost out on a lot of things, that these moments, for example, that I could have, I don't know, reflected differently, done something differently in my life. And then I also had this opportunity to use my music to heal myself and empower others. So my latest project has been creating a spoken word album that's called The Grieving Project. And it basically takes 4 characters, and I'm one of them, and it plunges them through 14 stages of grieving and thriving. And the reason that I'm doing all of this is that I want to help others process their own loss and grief around illness. Because, we often think that when you lose a loved one, that's when we grieve. But we're actually losing ourselves, so we have lost somebody that we love. And that we don't often think about grieving and illness. So that's a lot right now. There's 6 skills. I'm going to stop there and see if you have some thoughts or some questions.
I heard an interview with Sting one day, and he was talking about the fact that he was doing songs as he got older that were meatier and a little more important and maybe political, and reached a bigger issue. And he said there was a certain point where he realized nobody cares whether he was in love or not anymore. that he needed to face a bigger world issue. So I don't know what your songs were about before you got sick, but did you hit a point where you just went, I have not even a bigger story to tell about your illness, but you had a bigger responsibility to inform people? Because after
Yeah.
looking at your music, there's a lot of information there. And all of us that have chronic illness, we're teachers for people who don't have illness about what our life is like daily.
Yeah. Yeah.
So therein lies my question. Did you feel a bigger responsibility with your art?
No. And I'm going to be honest about it because that's my point. I escaped into my art. I used it initially for years to escape. And it wasn't until 2016 that I had that want to be part of something bigger, I had a yearning to give back and to create something that can help others. So for me, that, if I'm going to be honest, it was for escape. It was honestly so that I could express and create and heal. But later, yes, it turned into a yes because I understood that I needed to see the gift in the curse. I needed to use this to help other people that I could inspire. And here's what's interesting. Even back in 2011, which for me is, 3 years into my journey, but 9 years ago, even in 2011, the seeds were planted for me to have that role. Because when I first put out an EP, the PR person said, the headline for the PR release was, artist inspires with debilitating illness, inspires other people. And I didn't see myself that way. I was just out of the hospital. What could I do? You know what I mean? I was dealing with the surviving stuff still, not the thriving. So until I had that change in both mindset, and then also, like I said, that realization of I need to integrate my journey with my illness into my art, that's when it happened.
And how is your health now?
I'm managing. So the interesting thing, one of my lessons learned about DM, which is what I call dermatomyositis, it isn't something I went through and I'm here now talking to you about it. It's an ongoing journey. That's a big deal too, because my latest was from August 2019 through March of 20. I was in the hospital for 5 days each month getting infusions to deal with a flare that happened in 2018 that resulted in me being homebound. So I'm sharing this because this is what creating with illness sometimes looks like. It's not, it's ongoing. Sometimes there are flares, and sometimes even I remember in 2018 at my live event that I'd spent months promoting and getting ready for, I got bronchitis. And I literally had to perform on stage without a voice and give my all. And I was so upset at that and saddened and frustrated, whatever all these emotions were at the time. And then I realized this is what, part of my journey is, and this is what it looks like. So I have to embrace that. And what I did, for that moment was like creating the space for people to come together, creating the space for me to share my story and not having to be so caring so much about what other people thought of my pitch or the quality of my voice that night. So I share that story because that's sometimes what happens. I made the decision in March to stop my infusions because of COVID risk right now. So I'm managing everything at home, and I feel like I'm managing pretty well right now. So thank you for asking that.
Good. Well, thank you for talking to me. We look forward to all your creativity and advocacy and good health in the future.
Ted, thank you. It's been an honor to be here, share some of my story, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.